What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Brandi Harvey. I am so excited that you have decided to join us for Vault Empowers Talks. Now, y'all know we are usually live, but this one is special. I'm so excited that we get to speak to the wonderful, the beautiful, the talented Fawn Weaver today. Fawn Weaver, I just got to go ahead and give you a little intro because you are a historian, you are a storyteller, you're an author. You're a wife, you're a founder, you're the CEO of Uncle Nearest, the fastest growing whiskey and bourbon producer in U.S. history.
Facts.
That's facts. That's big facts.
Facts.
But here's what I learned about you. You wake up every day on purpose, and you may walk into the room as one, but you come in with 10,000.
10,000 every time.
Welcome to Vault Empowers Talks.
Thank you.
I'm excited to talk with you today.
Thank you.
Listen, I willed this. You know, I told you before we got started that I came here for the tour 2 summers ago, and I sat on the porch, on that beautiful porch, you know, with the rocking chairs, child. I sat out there and I said, I've got to talk to this woman, because when I drove on this property, I was so inspired. And I don't think that you can come on this property. How many acres are we sitting on?
We're sitting on 323, but we're in escrow for the adjoining 105, so it's about to be 428.
428 acres of beautiful, beautiful land.
Yeah.
And it is a beautiful distillery. So, but you did not start here.
No.
And that's really what I want people to understand, because sometimes we wake up thinking that people just magically appeared in these positions of power, right?
Yeah.
But you have some very interesting beginnings. Your father, Frank Wilson, one of the great songwriters at Motown, but you were not birthed knowing that part of your father.
Yeah.
You were born in transition, as you say.
Yes.
So tell us about how you really started.
Yeah, well, my birth really was the transition. He was going from being a Motown writer, producer, the top 2 producer in the nation.
Yeah.
It's funny because I don't think Billboard still tracks it, but Billboard used to track who has the most songs in the #1 spot, and that would determine where you fell nationwide. And he was the #2 in the nation, not #2 black, #2 in the nation, period. His music was being spun everywhere. And so you go from that, and then at the height of his career, he decided, I'm not going to sign a new contract with Barry. And it wasn't a negative thing at all. He really truly felt called by God
To ministry.
to ministry.
Yeah.
Challenge is a lot of times God calls us, but it's not necessarily that moment, right?
Come on.
God is like, get your affairs in order, and then I'm just telling you where you're headed, right? And I think a lot of us, we move and without that proper transition, right?
Yeah.
Because the Lord says, and He will add no sorrow to it.
Yeah.
So when we jump ahead and we hear His calling very clearly, but the timing is also important.
Yeah.
And so that transition of going from this really, really high life, everybody knows you, you've got a house at the top of Hollywood Hills, you've got all these fancy cars, do all these huge Hollywood parties, and then all of a sudden, you don't have any money. Not because money is not coming in, but your consumption rate is so high, it's the same as you having no money.
Exactly.
And so we moved to Pasadena, and they bought this really beautiful home in Pasadena that made it look like we had money, right?
Because we always got to look like that. You know.
We looked like we had money.
Yeah.
And so I grew up with this juxtaposition of being in a family that really was struggling financially, but externally no one really knew that. And being a child in the middle of that, it's a lot. And then you have parents that went from entertainment industry and all that came with it. My mother said my father would have all this weed flown in from all of, like, the best weed from all over the world, and then the Lord would convict him and he'd take it outside and burn it all. And he went through this process several times, so I don't know how much money he spent burning weed that he flew in from all over the world. But that was his life, right? That was his life, my mom's life, high life. And then you come into ministry. Well, what happens when you come into ministry, and you'll remember this with R. Kelly, that he did I Believe I Can Fly, and all of a sudden we had him in pulpits across America.
Yeah.
I'm like, that don't make him a preacher, y'all. Just because he wrote a song called I Believe It and y'all are all singing it, that don't mean he should be in the pulpit.
Listen.
And so it's one of those things where because of his status and because he was bringing all these entertainers to church, they elevated him so quickly.
Yeah.
And he had to figure it out, elevated with a spotlight. Mm-hmm. And figuring out ministry elevated with a spotlight, I don't wish that on anybody.
It's hard to do.
It's hard to do, and there's so much judgment, right? Mm-hmm. And so as a child that's a product of that, then what ends up happening is we're under this sort of, I say that we were their pastor's guinea pig.
Absolutely.
Right? Because the pastor would say, your child shouldn't do this, and we weren't allowed to do this.
Yeah.
Your girl shouldn't wear pants, so that we're wearing skirts at 20 degrees outside, and we're wearing skirts because a Southern Baptist preacher took a scripture that said men shouldn't wear anything pertaining to women shouldn't wear anything pertaining to men, and decided that meant women shouldn't wear pants. And so if you take that and then kind of multiply that by another 50 things that was related to, on this given day, someone in the church believed a child should not do fill in the blank. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we weren't allowed to do that.
But you had a little rebellious spirit in you.
Day one.
You were like, look, this is who you want to be, right? And so you said, look, I'm not going for it at 18, 17. How old were you?
When I left home?
Yeah.
15.
15.
I was 15 when I left home. I was 16 when I dropped out of high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I heard your 18th birthday was spent where?
In my third homeless shelter.
In your third homeless shelter.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the trials and tribulations of you finding your own way.
Yeah. And I wouldn't change a single thing. Because it's like, even, I think a lot of people, when they go through that kind of stuff and they look at it, it's like, well, I didn't have to make that decision. And if I hadn't made that decision, so like dropping out of high school, right? It's like, I didn't have to make that decision, but it turned out the right decision for me.
Yeah.
And when it made sense for me to go back to college, summa cum laude.
Yeah.
That's like that. Wait, no. Yes, summa. I remember learning that I was graduating summa cum laude, and I was disappointed because I had always wanted to graduate magna cum laude, and then learned that was lower. So I would either have to get F's in my whole final semester, or I was gonna have to go with the higher laude. So I went the higher laude. But the point is that I never let any of those early decisions define me, but I did allow them to build a foundation that catapulted me.
Yeah. And no experience has been wasted.
None.
No experience has been wasted. So the story of Uncle Nearest, because we're sitting here on about to be over 400 acres, a beautiful land, but talk about how the story of Uncle Nearest found you, because it really found you at a very dark point in your life. Yeah, well, when it found me, it wasn't dark, but a couple of days later, it became dark. So when it found me, I was in Singapore, cover of, it was, my husband was there for some kind of board. And at the very last minute, I decided to take the trip with him because I had put quite a bit of money behind these two founders, really behind the brand. I've learned better now. My money goes behind founders, not a brand. But it was a brand that I believed in. It was a great brand. It's a brand that if the founders had been different, would have succeeded greatly. But I knew that I was on the cusp of losing about $2 million that I had put into this particular brand, this particular company. And I was so frustrated that I could not get these founders to see how they were killing their own brand and company. So I was like, babe, I gotta go, like, to a place where my phone don't ring. And so I went with him last minute, jumped on a flight, went to Singapore, and that's where I learned the story. It was on the cover of the New York Times International Edition, and it was, bold headline, Jack Daniels embraces a secret ingredient, help from a slave. But then it was the photo that I was drawn to, which is, I didn't drink Jack Daniel, didn't know really anything about him, but I knew what he looked like because they've done a really great job building his legacy and continuing that. So I knew what he looked like, and I knew there was a black man sitting to the right of him. And that was intriguing to me. Then when I looked up the full photo, not just the part that they cut, when I looked at the full photo, that full photo, Jack seated the center position,
to the black man.
Yeah.
And so I was so fascinated knowing, we knew it was either the end of the 19th century or top of 1900. We now know it to be about 1904 that that picture was taken. But what that said in a town called Lynchburg, I was like,
Tennessee.
somebody was sitting right above the Alabama border. I need to point that out. Now mind you, my school is UA, and I love my University of Alabama, but let me tell you, I don't drive through there at night.
Listen, I live in Georgia.
I don't drive through there at night.
Yeah.
So, well, I don't get off the freeways in Georgia at night.
You know best.
I know best. I'll keep on those freeways. And so there's, like, you're talking about Lynchburg, Tennessee, right above the Alabama. So that to me was pretty astounding. Enough so that I ordered Jack Daniel's Legacy.
Yeah.
The only biography that was ever authorized, and only one of two biographies to have ever been written, and the more accurate biography is the one that I ordered. So I ordered that biography, and then we left and we went to one of the islands that's near Singapore, which I can't remember where we were, but one of the islands. And we got there, and we weren't there for 24 hours before I learned that my niece, who I absolutely raised, and
she was like your baby.
My baby girl.
Yeah.
My baby girl. She had just been at the house, and she had literally just been talking to my husband, and I was working, I was with her for the first couple hours, but then I started working, but she wasn't ready to leave, so I could hear them talking for hours. And I remember her saying, Fawn was my mom. That is who she has been to me. She's been my mom, like her second mom.
Yeah.
Wasn't discounting her first mom at all.
Exactly, yeah.
But in her later lives, she lived with us, right? And she came to us. But anyway, she's 20, she had just turned 26. And we got the news there that she had been in a fatal motorcycle accident.
Yeah.
And that was a brutal time. But I'm not a person who grieves actively. I have to work. I have to work.
Yeah.
So the moment it happened, I began planning her homegoing ceremony. And it couldn't just be a homegoing ceremony.
You had to throw a party.
It had to be a full-on carnival.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted the kids who came to not even realize that they were at a funeral. I wanted everything that Brittany would have loved. I wanted her to have it on that day.
Yeah.
So for 2 weeks, I was just planning this homegoing ceremony. And at the end of the 2 weeks, and after we did the homegoing, I went home and I was like, oh crap.
Now what?
Now what? I actually have to grieve. And again, everybody's different. For
Absolutely.
me, grieving is uncomfortable for whatever reason. I own whatever is uncomfortable, and I don't try to explain it to myself. It just is, right? So grieving for me is uncomfortable. And so I started looking around for just more stuff to do, and I went to my desk, my office desk, and Jack Daniel's Legacy, the book, had come in from Amazon, was sitting there. So then I pulled it out and just started reading it. And I expected to see Nearest Green in the book, but not by name. I expected to see him in there referenced as a colored man or an enslaved man. Well, enslaved is a new term we're using. A slave. A slave. That's what I was expecting to see. Like, I was expecting to see someone crediting him with being the teacher of Jack Daniel, but not naming him.
Yeah.
Because all the other bourbons, we know that they have black distillers, but we don't know any of their names. So there would be no reason that I would think that in Jack Daniel's biography that Nearest Green would be mentioned. And as I continued reading it, literally Nearest and his boys, Eli and George, were mentioned more times than Jack's own family.
Yeah.
That was astounding to me. And I don't remember where in the book I was, but I remember my husband coming into the kitchen and I was sitting down below in the living room. And I said, babe, I really like this guy. And he's like, who? I said, Jack. Jack who? Like, yeah,
who is Jack?
Who is Jack? I was like, Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels.
Because by that point, I saw him as a real being, where I think most people see him as the face on a brand and don't really know he was a real true. I think he's the first case of allyship that we know of.
And that was the thing that really struck me in doing my research on you and this wonderful, wonderful company, is that you note this as one of the first first business allyships, relationships we see in the United States, right? Love, honor, and respect.
That's what it was, and it's now, even to this day, when I see people post on social media. First of all, could you please tell all the people, the picture with the man with the hat tilted that everyone keeps posting as being nearest, he's not even the Green. He's not related to the Greens at all, and he came about a century later. So, and every time someone posted, I'm like, y'all not recognizing that hat, not the same time frame at all. He was a friend of the family in St. Louis, of the Green family in St. Louis. So it was in their photo album. And I had posted like a bunch of photos from the photo album a long time ago. And for whatever reason, one person latched onto that.
And that's been the story.
I just saw that thing floating around the internet this past week. And I was like, y'all still with somebody in the 1960s wanted to be nearest. Okay.
So with this story, and it came at a time that really saved you, and you got a chance to pour yourself into something else, to take your mind off of the grief. But you stated that you were chosen to tell this story.
Without question.
That this is your leg of the race.
Without question.
Give me the significance of September 5th.
Go ahead. You just saw it on the tour. Right?
I know it, but I heard it, so I need them to know. Listen.
So how I know for certain that I was chosen, and this is so much bigger than me, which is why I refuse to take credit for all the stuff that y'all see. I make sure that people know the history that we're making on a daily basis, but I won't take credit for it. Because when you look at all of the keepers of the story of Nearest Green, every single one, when they stopped telling the story at Jack Daniel back in somewhere between 78 and 79, the story disappeared. The last of Jack's descendants, Rager Motlow, to run the distillery, he transitioned to the board, and he was basically on it till he died. He died in 78. One of Nearest's descendants, who would always come here and bring friends from college and go on the tour so that she could kind of show off, right? Yeah. She came in 79 and she called her daughter and said, they whitewashed my granddaddy out of this, my great-granddaddy out of this. And so that we know where the time frame where it happened. We still don't know who did it, but I have an idea. But we know when it happened. And so knowing that was the time frame, well, his granddaughter, her name is Annabelle, but everybody called her Mammy. To this day, Victoria, who I think you're interviewing, Mammy, that she don't call her grandma, she don't call Mammy. That's how she liked to be referred to. And Mammy would sit on her front porch, stone's throw from Jack Daniel Distillery, and she made sure every single person who came to her front porch, which was the gossip porch, and she was making really good Southern food every single day, that's soul food, and she made sure everybody knew who Nearest Green was and the importance of what he had done at the distillery that she could literally point to from her house. The second keeper of the story of Nearest Green was Ben Green, of no relation. He's a white reporter from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, who came up to write this definitive autobiography or biography of Jack Daniel, and that's the second person. That's whose book I read. Yeah. Then the third person is Clay Risen, whose article I read in the New York Times. He was the journalist who broke the story for the NYT. And then here comes me, the fourth person. So as I'm doing my research, I come across an article in which the whole town of Lynchburg is sending Mammy cards for her 99th birthday. And she's got this massive stack of birthday cards. Wow. And it says, Mammy born September 5th, 1901. I was like, that's interesting. I'm born September 5th. That's real interesting. Then I'm interviewing Ben Green's son, Duff. And he said, yeah, my dad was born September 5th, 1902. And I was like, Mammy, Duff, me, okay, cool. And then for whatever reason, it still didn't click until my husband calls me one day, or he texts me, and he said, hey babe, I was just looking up something on Clay online, and you probably already know this, but did you realize y'all are born on the exact same day? Not day, like September 5th, 1976. He was born in Nashville, I was born in LA, exact same day. I haven't asked him what time he was born, because that would just be plain. But every keeper of the story was born on September 5th. And until they changed this more recently, after all this stuff came out, and now they celebrate Jack Daniel's birthday as the entire month of September. until that change was made, Jack's birthday was always celebrated on September 5th.
Wow.
So when they ask me things and they expect for me to say something negative about Jack, I was like, number one, not gonna happen, because everything I know about that man was he was an ally to us. We now call it an ally. Back then they would have called him a that's exactly who he was. And so beside that, when I'm looking at who's playing puppet strings from heaven, it's the September 5th dude.
Listen, got to be. It's divine. When I heard that, I said, I was walking, I'm listening to you tell that story on a podcast, and I'm walking around Chastain Park, and I literally stopped like, what? I said, that is, you have to know that you have been chosen for such a time as this.
I have been chosen for such a time as this, and if you watch the marketing campaign that we have done that has catapulted this company and this brand to levels that the industry has never seen. Last year, we tracked how much press there was last year alone. And every single day, there were at least 4 press stories, Monday through Friday, on Uncle Nearest around the world. There's not a brand in history.
Not at all.
January, February, our press alone, 2 billion impressions. Like, that's nuts. But if you watch what we're doing, because I did all the research on Jack, it's literally his blueprint. It's literally what I am doing. And so people try to ask me, and I'm like, go back to what Jack was doing. Because what you're watching me do is really a reincarnation of what he did.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Brandi Harvey. Thanks for watching our video today. But guess what? It does not stop there. I need you to do something. I need you to like. I need you to subscribe. But I also need you to share it with somebody who needs some daily motivation. Make sure you are subscribed to the Vault platform because we got more content on the way. It's your girl, Brandi Harvey. You already know we empower every day, all day.